Well, protests continue over police killings of unarmed black men. Demonstrators today interrupted the opening session of the Missouri State Legislature. They chanted slogans and unfurled banners to protest the fatal police shooting of Michael Brown Jr. in Ferguson, Missouri. Meanwhile, a grand juror in the Michael Brown case filed a lawsuit to obtain permission to speak publicly. The suit names prosecutor Robert McCullough as the defendant and criticizes how evidence was presented. The jury decided not to indict Brown's killer and set off violent demonstrations. And tension is high in New York City. Police officers there blame Mayor Bill de Blasio's support of protesters for creating a, quote, anti-police environment. Charles F. Coleman Jr. is a community activist, and he joins us to discuss the nationwide protests and the escalating tension between many African-American communities and law enforcement. Charles, good to see you.
Good to see you.
We talked to you a lot just after the decision to not indict Eric Garner's killer and Daniel Pantaleo. And it is very interesting that the conversation seems to have died down a little. Right. However, the protests are ongoing. Where do I want to start with this? Let me just go back to this lawsuit that was filed against Bob McCullough.
Sure.
Is that unusual?
It is somewhat. This lawsuit was filed on behalf of Juror Doe, who is an unknown juror because he cannot be named at this point, through the American Civil Liberties Union in federal court in Missouri. And basically, they're not seeking money. What they're seeking is a removal of the gag order, which has basically placed a lifetime ban on any of the grand jurors speaking publicly about what happened in that grand jury. Now, it seems, based off of the complaint, the main reason that they filed for this is because the characterization of the presentation that Bob McCullough has put out differs starkly from what many of the grand jurors felt actually happened in that jury, and they want to speak publicly about what they feel were some inconsistencies represented by Mr. McCullough.
What's the chances that this juror will win this suit? I mean, Bob McCullough is an officer of the court. It'll be a judge deciding this case from the jury. Do you think that gag order will be lifted?
I think they have a puncher's chance, if you will. I think it's going to be kind of difficult for them, primarily because while they did cite to some very strong Supreme Court law, basically saying that this should be weighed on a case-by-case basis, balancing the interests of the state, as well as the public interest to their First Amendment rights in terms of being able to speak. One of the things that could play a factor is we saw how volatile and incendiary it was when the grand jury file was released. And a judge looking at this case may in fact decide, you know what, this has the potential to really, spark a powder keg, and we don't want to necessarily make things worse. The one thing that will be interesting to see is in 30 days, Bob McCullough's office will have to file a response. I'm predicting it will likely be a motion to dismiss rather than an actual answer and further engaging, but that will be very telling as to the direction of this suit.
It's been a few weeks since these decisions have come down by both of these grand juries. Do you think that there is actually a connection being made in the discourse? Is law enforcement getting what protesters are saying?
No, and I think that's a significant part of the problem. What people have lamented, particularly here in New York, is that while the vast majority of law enforcement do their jobs exceptionally well, there is still room to go, especially when it comes to how the communities of color across America are being policed, how the aggressive tactics that are being employed. And it seems as though, despite, valid criticisms, the NYPD, for example, continues to sort of balk in the face of what are founded and statistically supported assertions against them. And so that's part of the frustration that continues to, fester around the country with respect to many of these protests.
Speaking of that specifically, of course, there's a lot of controversy broiling here in New York City between particularly the Patrolmen's Benevolence Association, the PBA, headed by Pat Lynch, and the mayor, Mayor Bill de Blasio. And there's this huge criticism between both of them. Right. How much do you think race is a part of this? Because politics truly is a part of this.
Absolutely. While it has been politicized on a number of levels, I can't deny, and I think most people who are looking at this would have to acknowledge that there is a strong undercurrent of race. And a lot of that has to deal with Bill de Blasio's background, both as a politician and personally. He's married to a black woman. He has a son who is half black. He's been very candid about how how race has played a role in terms of how he has groomed and developed his son, and with respect to his conversations with him in law enforcement. And there's also sort of been the tension with respect to legislation that he supported across the city that has been either considered to be anti-police or race baiting. Things like the Community Safety Act, which allow individuals to sue officers who they feel have racially profiled or discriminated against them. Bill de Blasio was in favor of those measures, which in the eyes of many top brass like Pat Lynch, like other heads of NYPD unions, put him on what they consider to be the wrong side of the racial discussion. So it's absolutely a factor.
Yeah, it really is boiling over here. We're going to have to leave it right there for now, but we'll talk about it some more because it's not going anywhere, that's for sure. Charles Coleman, thank you so much.
Thanks, Debbie.
Good to see you.